My name is Warren Mayer and I am an educator at the Andy Warhol Museum. Today I will be exploring one of Andy Warhol's lesser-known bodies of work, the sewn photographs, and showing you a few ways you can recreate this technique at home. Warhol was a lifelong photography enthusiast and always seemed to have a camera at the ready, whether it was the Kodak Brownie camera of his 1930s youth in Pittsburgh, or the Polaroid Big Shot of his later established career. These photographs often served as the basis for Warhol's screen prints, or stood as works of art on their own. But in the mid-80s he started using photos, specifically 35mm photos taken with his Minox camera, to create an innovative new series, the Sewn Photographs. Since the same black and white image would be repeated multiple times with no space left between the edges, the subject matter of the photos becomes less important than the overall abstract composition. There are several ways to approach making your own sewn photographs at home. Warhol's were usually made with a sewing machine, but this video will highlight two hand-stitched approaches. The first will use thread and a sewing needle. For safety, you may want a thimble and a pincushion, and young children should have adult supervision. We will also show an adaptation using yarn instead of thread. For this option, you will need a hole punch like this one here. Both versions will be shown in this video, and for each we will be using a pair of scissors, clear tape, and digital images printed on standard printer paper. You can use almost any type of photograph, from instant photos to old film, or other sources. If needed, cut down the pictures you plan to use. Start with 2 copies. I'll be using this portrait of Warhol. Next, use a small piece of tape to hold the 2 pictures together temporarily. Make sure the photos overlap by about ½ inch. This will keep the photos in place once you've made a few stitches, at which point the tape can be removed. Now you can prepare the yarn or thread you plan to use. If you're using thread, cut about 1 yard and guide the thread through the eye of the needle. Pull the thread through until the needle is in the middle of your thread. To make a knot at the other end, loop the loose ends around your finger a few times, roll the loop off your finger, and pull it tight. This knot will hold the stitching in place where you start to sew. If you use yarn, you will also want to cut about 1 yard. The yarn will not be doubled up like the thread, but we still want about 1 yard since the stitching will be looser than with the thread. You will also need to prepare your paper slightly differently. Hold the 2 photos together, back to back, and use a hole punch to make a row of evenly spaced holes every ½ inch. Then you can prepare your yarn. Use a small piece of tape at one end to prevent the yarn from fraying, and make a knot at the other end. Now you can start to stitch your photos together. If you are using a needle and thread, use a thimble to protect your finger or thumb as you work. Make the first stitch by guiding the needle up through both papers at one end, and pull the thread through until the knot meets the paper. Then push the needle down through both papers a small distance from the first stitch and pull the thread tight again. The third stitch should be made halfway between the first 2, the fourth a little past the second, and so on. We can do a similar process with the yarn, stitching through the prepared holes in an alternating pattern. Since the yarn is thicker than thread, the holes can be a little farther apart. Remove the tape in the middle once you reach it and continue to the end of your photos. Once you reach the end, you'll create another knot to hold all your stitches in place. With yarn, you can just make a knot at the end. With thread, loop the needle through your last stitch a few times and pull the thread tight. Warhol usually left some extra to dangle over the completed piece, so you can too. Now that you've sewn your 2 pictures together, you can make larger grids or leave the pair as is. Thanks for watching. We hope you've enjoyed making your very own sewn photographs.